In 1916, at the Riding Stampede exhibition organized in New York, the Norwegian-American horsewoman Tilly Baldwin entered the arena among professional cowboys, marking an important step in the still rare female participation in rodeos at the beginning of the 20th century. The performance reaffirmed the cowboy, a figure born of Western work and already turned into an attraction for urban audiences. In the scene, one observes a Western cowboy carrying a .44 caliber Henry rifle, introduced to the U.S. market in 1860 and considered a milestone in the adoption of repeating firearms. Even with its lever action and tubular magazine for 15 cartridges, the Henry rarely made it onto the plains where bison were hunted. The horsewoman Vera McGinnis, accompanied by two fellow cowgirls, illustrates a phenomenon that, since the end of the 19th century, spread from Texas ranches to New York rodeo arenas. Throughout the United States, both in working corrals and festive parades, Western attire established itself as a functional and identity-defining uniform for men and women connected to livestock and equestrian entertainment. In mid-1912, the administration of Crater Lake National Park, Oregon, promoted a boating excursion, one of the first recorded on the lake. The crossing in a rowboat allowed visitors to document the blue hue of the water and take measurements near Wizard Island, located in the center of the caldera formed about 7,700 years ago by the eruption of Mount Mazama. Around 1900, in the Hopi villages on the Arizona Plateau, basket making played a central role. Weavers gathered yucca, cured fibers, and dyed them with minerals before braiding spiral patterns. The baskets served rituals, exchanges, and corn storage and marked clan lineage. Even in the presence of missionaries and federal agents, the practice maintained ritual norms and techniques, ensuring its transmission. Stephanie Hagenbarth, a descendant of the founders of Hagenbarth Ranch, coordinated the day-to-day cattle raising on property that straddled the very line dividing Idaho from Montana. This land, in uninterrupted family possession since the 1880s, preserved management practices passed down from generation to generation. Here follow the names of certain U.S. Marshals, among them Heck Thomas, Bill Tilghman, and Chris Madsen, who, beyond the ordinary work of federal officers, frequently exercised authority in the then-called Indian Territory, the main stage of conflicts at the end of the 19th century. After spending 5 years on the run accused of murdering Deputy Daniel Maples, the Cherokee Ned Christie was surrounded in November 1892 and met his end there. Produced in 1928 and set in the broad valleys of Wyoming, the feature film presents Tim McCoy as Lieutenant Jack Colleton of the U.S. Cavalry. The plot follows Colleton and the small garrison he commands, assigned by the Army to restore federal authority and contain recurring clashes among settlers, traders, and indigenous peoples, disputing routes and resources. In 1849, during the topographical expedition, he led through the arid south of what was then New Mexico Territory. The engineer Lieutenant Emil Weeks Whipple found, on the edge of a trail near the Gila River, a teenage girl of the Yuma Nation, disoriented and exhausted. He recorded in his diary that the young woman, without water or food for days, could barely breathe. After giving first aid, he took her to the nearest Yuma settlement, delivering her to her family's chiefs. In 1915, as tourism was taking hold in the American West, Mariposa Grove, already incorporated into Yosemite National Park, stood out as an observation site for naturalists and travelers. There was the most visited stand of giant sequoias, millennial trees that fueled conservation debates and attracted a growing public. In 1906, the Arizona Club operated in Las Vegas, Nevada, then a mere railroad outpost in the desert. It offered card tables, a drinks bar, and rooms for railroad workers, miners, and travelers on the San Pedro-Salt Lake Railroad line. With fewer than 5,000 inhabitants, the city had in the club its main social space, a stage for business meetings and frequent notes in the regional press. In 1911, at the Second Pendleton Roundup in Pendleton, Oregon, An episode illustrative of women's performance in rodeo arenas was recorded. Moments before the official opening of the events, the horsewomen lined up mounted, with hats and skirts suited to the craft, and saluted the public, signaling their readiness to compete in every event with firmness and skill. In 1940, at the age of 14, Casey Tibbs left the family ranch in South Dakota and entered the professional rodeo circuit to forge a career. His skill in rough stock riding earned him, in 1949, the world title and a cover feature in Life magazine. After the competitive stage, he devoted the next 2 decades in Hollywood to acting, stunt work, and advising on rodeo filming. On December 1, 1886, at the Texas station of Bellevue, Jim, in the photo, and his brother Rube Burrow stopped the night train, subdued the crew, and obtained only a few $100s. This modest haul, however, inaugurated a series of robberies that would mobilize sheriffs, Pinkerton detectives, and armed posses in pursuit. In the film Wyoming, there is a documentary-worthy sequence that methodically showcases the breadth of Tim McCoy's knowledge about westward expansion, the structure of the frontier army at the end of the 19th century, and the socio-cultural practices of the native nations present there. The moment reveals his critical command not only of regional topography and chronology, but also of the prevailing political interactions. Although the record of the Wyoming cowboy has been lost, the image is credited to Charles D. Kirkland, a photographer from Cheyenne, then a railroad center. Dating studies of the negative indicate that the portrait was produced between 1877 and 1895. December 3, 1880. W.S. Kugler, then co-owner of the Las Vegas Gazette, publishes an extensive report examining the resurgence of cattle rustling, stagecoach robberies, and homicides that, throughout that year, alarmed the Pecos River Valley and the panhandle of New Mexico Territory. The author names those involved and emphasizes that all act under the command of Billy the Kid, a figure already recognized as a leader capable of directing any gang, no matter how bold and lawless. In 1906, on the wide lands of Turkey Track Ranch, Texas, cowboys, hands, and visitors gathered to play the then popular game of mumble peg. The practice, common in southwestern camps, required careful handling of pocket knives and followed strict rules that judged, throw by throw, the steadiness of the hand and the competitor's accuracy. In the second half of the 19th century, the Miller and Lux Ranch, established in the San Joaquin Valley, consolidated itself as the largest integrated structure of livestock, farming, and industrial slaughter in the United States. Created in 1858 by the German butchers Henry Miller and Charles Lux, the complex came to control about 1.3 million acres across California, Oregon, and Nevada, articulating canals, railroads, and supply contracts to urban centers. At the end of the 19th century, infantry rifles had barrels of 28 to 32 inches. The image of the Astoria Express Company guards, taken in Oregon around 1880, shows this. Cut-down barrels facilitated use in narrow spaces, but the long pieces offered a longer sighting line, better effective range, and slightly less recoil when the trigger was pulled. In an 1888 photograph from Pueblo, Colorado, 2 residents pose for hunting. One holds a Winchester Model 1886 lever-action repeating rifle. The other, a double-barreled shotgun with external hammer. In the West, 10 and 12-gauge cartridges dominated for their power. Gauges 16, 20, and smaller, though common, were preferred only for specific applications, such as on swift-flying birds. Donaldina Cameron, born in New Zealand, left the security of her family while young and moved to San Francisco to serve at the Presbyterian Mission Home for Chinese Girls. From 1895, when she took charge of the rescue home on Sacramento Street, until her retirement 47 years later, she confronted in courts and raids the trafficking agents who brought girls from Canton into servitude and prostitution on the U.S. West Coast. This anonymous cowboy from Caldwell, Kansas, poses equipped with revolver and rifle, ready to escort a herd along the Chisholm Trail. The image was recorded during the peak movement of the prosperous rail towns that received cattle in Kansas. The Tabor Opera House, built in 1879, rises 3 stories high with brick walls 16 inches thick. This robustness confirms the building's ability to withstand more than a century of Rocky Mountain winters. Photo, collection of the Colorado Historical Society. On October 17, 1906, the Deadwood Theater recorded full occupancy. As actor Charles Chapin noted, the spectators, mostly well-paid miners, showed ample financial means, buying tickets without bargaining, filling every seat, and greeting the scenes with constant applause. The so-called dance hall girl of the Moulin Rouge, a cabaret opened in 1889 in Montmartre, represented the entertainment professional of fin de siècle Paris. Her numbers combined can-can, burlesque steps, and invitations to toast, setting the pace of the night. The costume, layered skirt, corset, high stockings, tiny hat, created visual effects in the kicks under gaslight. This performance, aimed at tourists and locals, established the cabaret as a symbol of urban modernity. For generations, Providence protected these trees, spared them from drought, pests, landslides, gales, and countless floods, yet it could not shield them from man's recklessness. So recorded John Muir, a pioneering voice of conservationism in the United States and the world. In July 1878, Sam Bass, famed for train robberies, arrived with his gang in Round Rock, Texas. After surveilling the town's bank, he set the heist for July 19th. Alerted by informants, Texas Rangers and police positioned themselves on the main street. The gunfight began before Bass entered. Bass and 2 accomplices fell. Another fled wounded. Among those present was Jeff Smith, 17 years old, whose note remained in the reports. The arrival of Teddy Blue Abbott in Miles City occurred precisely when the locality was recognized as the main headquarters of livestock activity in the Northern Plains. According to Teddy Blue himself, when a cowboy's money ran out, he did not stay there. He saddled his horse and returned to the ranch of origin.